G'day, ladies and gentlemen. Scotty D here from the Australis Tabletop Wargaming Network, and welcome into our next installment in our series, How to Play Warhammer 40,000, 10th edition. Alrighty, everyone, and welcome into our next installment in our How to Play Warhammer 40,000 series here on the HWN, where we're continuing our look at the core mechanics of the game, the different ways you're able to play Warhammer 40,000, and how to go about constructing army lists as well. And for today's video, we're going to be looking at the variety of different weapon and deployment abilities that are in the game, now that they've all been streamlined and put into the core rules under what colloquially we call universal special rules. So before we jump in, I want to thank everyone who has been watching our content this year. Really appreciate, and those who have been subscribing to our YouTube channel this year. I really appreciate your support. And from all of us here at the ATWN, we wish that you had a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year as well throughout the festive season. So as we jump in, we are going to start by looking at the weapon abilities. Now, these abilities are the ones that appear in the square brackets next to the weapon's name, or they could be given through abilities throughout an army ability or a detachment ability or a unit ability or an enhancement even as well. So bear that in mind when you are looking at various rules that may reference some of these abilities as well. So let's jump into having a look at some of these different weapon abilities. The first one we have got is the Assault ability. Now, this ability allows any weapons that have the Assault ability to be shot after a unit has made an advance move, which allows you to get a bit of extra movement before making some shooting attacks with this weapon. The next one is Rapid Fire. Now, when you are shooting at a target that is within half range with a rapid fire weapon, you'll get an additional number of shots equal to the value of X, which is denoted by the number directly next to the name of rapid fire in those square brackets. So it pays to be a bit closer with these weapons, so you're able to get more shots into your enemy unit, and it is on a model by model basis as well, so that is something to bear in mind. The next one is Ignores Cover, and just as it sounds, is that units that are targeted by weapons with the Ignores Cover ability do not receive the benefits of cover when making saves against attacks made by that weapon. Next up, we have got Twin Linked. Now, Twin Linked used to be re-rolling to hit rolls, whereas now it is actually re-rolling to wound rolls in 10th edition as well, so bear that in mind. With Twin Linked, I know there is a little bit of confusion in the game currently about that, but it is for re-rolling to wound rolls when making shooting attacks or close combat attacks with a twin weapon. Next up, we've got the Pistol Weapon ability. Now, this ability allows a weapon with the pistol ability to make shooting attacks even when it is engaged in close combat with engagement range of an enemy unit. However, you must target the enemy units you're within engagement range with. You can also not shoot any other ranged weapon if you are shooting a pistol weapon, unless the firing model is a monster or vehicle unit. So you need to bear that in mind when you are going to choose to fire, say, a bolt pistol instead of a bolt rifle, for example. The next weapon ability we have got is Torrent. Now, this used to be called Flamer, or just a general ability as well. And what this is that weapons with the Torrent ability automatically hit their target, so many Flamers will have Torrent ability now. Next one, and this is one of my personal favorite additions in 10th edition, and that is Lethal Hits. Now, Lethal Hits as an ability, when you are firing a weapon with the Lethal Hits ability against a target, when you make a critical hit roll, which is generally a 6, it automatically wounds the target without having to make that wound roll save. So it does remove a step in the process of needing to be able to actually successfully wound the target. You scored that critical hit against them, you've automatically wounded them, and they just have to make that save against that attack. The next one up is the Lance ability, and this ability gives the bearer +1 to wound when making melee attacks after they've made a charge move this turn. So it's really good to get a charge off with units that have got a melee weapon with the Lance ability. Next up, we've got the Indirect Fire ability. Now, weapons with this ability are able to target enemy units that are not visible to the firing unit. However, if there are no models in that unit that are visible to the firing model, when making these attacks, the firing model does suffer a -1 to hit, and the target unit does get the benefit of cover when making saves against indirect fire weapons. So it's just to mitigate the damage that these weapons are able to output against units that they can't actually see. The next weapon ability is Precision. Now, Precision allows you to target an attached unit with this weapon when you are making attack against a unit that has got a character in this or bodyguard unit, and if that character is visible, you are able to allocate attacks from these weapons onto that character unit instead of being just absorbed by the bodyguard unit. So you can actually pick out those characters as well. The next weapon ability is the blast ability. Now, weapons with the blast ability get to make an additional hit roll for every 5 models in the target unit, rounding down. However, blast weapons cannot be used to shoot against a unit that is within engagement range of any enemy units from the attacking model's army, including the bearer. So that means you can't fire it in close combat with a vehicle, for example, with big guns never tire. So you have to shoot that outside of the combat at -1 to hit if you were to fire that weapon. The next weapon ability we're looking at is the melter ability. Now, the melter ability, if a weapon with the melter ability is targeting units within half range, you get to add an additional X number of damage, where X is the number next to the melter ability keyword in those square brackets, allowing you to do extra damage if you are within half range of that enemy unit. Next up, we have got heavy. Now, if the bearer's unit has remained stationary during the movement phase and you have got a heavy keyword weapon in your unit, that weapon gets a +1 hit when you are making ranged attacks with it. So it gives you an incentive to standing still with that weapon as well. The next ability that we're looking at is hazardous. Now, when you are making a shooting or melee attack with a weapon that has the hazardous ability, you have to normally choose. Normally it's on plasma as well, where you're going to use a normal profile or you're going to overcharge it with a hazardous ability. Now, when you make attacks with hazardous weapons, after you've resolved the attacks, you have to roll a d6 for every model that has fired a hazardous weapon. And for every roll of a 1, that test has actually failed. And a model equipped with one of the hazardous weapons is destroyed. However, if it is a character, monster, or vehicle keyword unit, it instead just takes a flat 3 mortal wounds instead, meaning that if you do it on a character, it's going to be quite detrimental to their lifespan on the table if you do manage to overcharge and fail that hazardous check. The next ability is Devastating Wounds. Now, Devastating Wounds has changed since the release of 10th edition. And within the first 3 months, it was quite a big problematic weapon ability, and so Games Workshop have altered it. So I'm going to share the altered version, as I do not foresee them changing it back to what it used to be. And so when you are making attacks with a weapon with this ability, any critical wounds ignore all armor and invulnerable saves. You still get a feel no pain save against it. However, it does ignore all other saves possible, meaning it is a good way to just get flat damage through if you are able to score those critical wounds against target units. The next ability that we're looking at is Sustained Hits. Now, weapons with this ability score an additional number of hits equal to the number X in the brackets next to Sustained Hits in those square brackets whenever you score a critical hit against a target, and that typically is a 6 to hit. So that is a nice way to generate some additional hits against an enemy. Next up, we've got the Extra Attacks ability. Now, weapons with this ability allow the bearer to make additional attacks with the weapon that has got the Extra Attacks ability in addition to any other melee weapon they are fighting with in general, because it has this ability. So otherwise, you have to pick one of the melee weapons to fight with instead of being able to fight with both because of this Extra Attacks keyword. That's something that's pretty nice if you, say, have a Primaris Tech Marine with a power with his axe, and his servo arm as well is also able to fight. Next up, we've got the anti-weapon ability. Now, the anti-weapon ability is a unique one because it will specify a keyword next to anti with an X plus value. That X plus value is the dice result you need to actually have the ability happen. So when you are shooting against a unit that matches the keyword necessary for the anti-keyword X plus, and you get a result of X on to wound roll, it automatically wounds the target regardless of toughness. So say, for example, you've got an anti-monster 2+ ability. Even if you would normally need 5s or 6s to wound it with this weapon, it's going to be wounding on a 2+ because of the anti-ability. Now, that is it for all of the different weapon abilities that you can come across in your army when you're putting it together, or the various abilities you might want to utilize in your games, but also it's going to be able to allow you to know what your opponent is using on the battlefield as well, if you are familiar with those abilities and such and what's happening there as well. Now, the next area we're going to be looking at is we're also going to be looking at deployment abilities, where there is only a handful of these, so there's not too many to go through, unlike the weapon ability. So first up is Deep Strike. Now, a unit that has Deep Strike ability during the declared battle formation step, instead of placing it on the battlefield, you can choose to place it in the reserves instead. Now, when they are able to come onto the battlefield during the reinforcement step of your movement phase, they can come in anywhere on the battlefield that is more than 9 inches horizontally away from any enemy units, and following the mission rules as to when they are allowed to come onto the table as well. The next ability is the Scout's ability. Now, any units that got the Scout's ability, it'll be shown with an X denoted next to the Scout, normally in inches, telling you how far that unit is able to make a Scout move with. Now, once you have determined who is going first, but before the start of the first battle round, if you have a unit with the Scout ability, you are able to make a Scout move up to that inch value for that unit. And if the unit is deployed within a dedicated transport, the dedicated transport is allowed to make that Scout move instead of the unit. When making a Scout move, it must end more than 9 inches horizontally away from all enemy models as well. So that is something to bear in mind. And if both players have got scouting units, the player who is going first gets to make the Scout moves with their units first as well. Next up, we've got the Infiltrate ability. Now, what the Infiltrate ability does, during deployment, if every model in a unit has this ability, they're able to be set up anywhere on the battlefield that is more than 9 inches horizontally away from enemy units and the enemy deployment zone. So you can get pretty decently into the midfield onto objectives and such, unless you're playing scrambler fields, when you are deploying these units on the field as well. They can be quite good utility in a lot of lists, and you will run into them quite commonly if you're playing competitively. Then the last deployment ability is the Leader ability. Now, we've kind of already covered this off when we looked at attached units, but I'm going to run through it a little bit again here. So when a character has the Leader ability, it'll specify any units that they are able to join, and those units are denoted as bodyguard units. So during the declared battle formation step, you can pick for each leader unit in your army one of the bodyguard units that they are able to join. Normally, you only have one character join a bodyguard unit. There are some exceptions to that rule, however, so be aware of that in your codex. Now, when an attack targets an attached unit, you use the toughness of the bodyguard unit, even if the character has a different toughness characteristic. Each time a unit with a character in it is successfully wounded, that wound cannot be allocated to the character even if it has already lost one or more wounds to it this phase or had attacks allocated against it this phase, say precision weapons. So it means that you can't just keep on killing them out because they've already suffered wounds or you have already allocated attacks to them. You still have to kill through the bodyguard unit first. Once all models in the bodyguard unit have been destroyed, then you can allocate any attacks that are left to be allocated their wounds onto the character model for them to be resolved, and any other attacks that have not been resolved against the unit actually fizzle out and do not get to resolve them because the target unit declared it against no longer exists. And with all of the deployment abilities covered, that is all of the weapon and deployment abilities for 10th edition of the game that we're going to be looking at in today's video. Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, so that is going to be it for our weapon and deployment abilities video in our Warhammer 40,000 10th edition series. I hope you did enjoy this video and it gave you a good explanation as to what each ability does, the impact it'll have on your games, and where you might want to be making use of them, and how to actually combo some of these together as well. If you did enjoy this video, feel free to leave a comment down below. If you have any questions as well, ask away. If you did enjoy the video, make sure to hit that like button. And if you want to catch more content from us here at the ATWN, feel free to hit that subscribe button, turn on that notification bell, so you're able to be notified as to when we are releasing more content here on the network, whether that is tournament coverage, tournament previews, ITC South Pacific Snapshot, From Sprue to Tabletop, or more how to play Warhammer 40,000 10th edition videos as well. And if you do have any questions but don't want to ask them here, that is completely okay. Feel free to come and find us where we are on Twitch at Astralis TWN, where you can follow us there, turn on that notification bell there too, so you're notified when the stream's starting up. And there you can ask any questions of myself or whoever else is on commentary at tournaments as well, providing that live coverage. You can ask your questions, you can get them answered, whether in chat or whether verbally if I'm sitting down doing a hobbying session and such as well. So, ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank each and every one of you for watching today's video, and I hope to catch you in the next one.